without further ado, I will introduce our speaker, Jason Gootman. He is a highly sought after wellness Sherpa, and he's known for helping people who've struggled with taking care of themselves to become truly well. And he does this without the misguided and harmful no pain, no gain workout programs. And then, of course, the rigid diets that never work for long term. So he helps to stop the guaranteed to fail kind of programs. And he is an expert at behavior change and habit formation. And that will be evident in today's webinar. So without further ado, again, here comes Jason.
Thanks, Kim, and welcome everyone to my workshop, Creatures of Habit, How to Form Self-Care Habits That Stick. So what we're going to do today is walk through the 7 evidence-based steps that I find to be extremely helpful, borderline essential to helping my clients form self-care habits that stick. I want you to keep this opening slide image in your mind throughout the next hour because I'm going to refer back to it several times. A really, really great metaphor for forming a habit is a snowball rolling down a hill and gaining size and momentum. So just keep that in the back of your mind. We're going to do this as a participatory workshop, not that we're going to be speaking with each other until the end if we have time for some questions, but that I'm going to ask you to reflect on some questions about a habit you're trying to form. So I would suggest having either old-fashioned paper and pen handy or the electronic equivalent where you can take some notes and write some things down. So if you don't have that handy yet, take a minute or two here and scurry something from your home office and get set up for that. I respect your time and I respect the concept of Zoom fatigue, so I'm going to do everything possible to have this done in 1 hour, including some time for questions. We'll do questions at the end, so we'll go through these 7 steps one after the other, and then take some questions at the end. As a brief introduction of my credentials, I'm a Mayo Clinic certified wellness coach, as well as a certified nutritionist and certified exercise physiologist. Also have my contact information on the screen. You might like to take a screenshot of this. I'm glad to take questions after the workshop. If there's something we don't get to during the workshop, or there's something you want to ask me that you don't necessarily want to ask during the workshop. So there's my contact info. And let's get to our first of our 7 steps. So the first step in forming a self-care habit that really sticks is to get really clear on the habit that you want to form. And what I mean, let me give you a few examples that will help you get a sense of what I mean by get really clear. So a person might say, in 2021, I want to have less junk food in the house. That's pretty nebulous. They might make it more clear and specific by saying, I'm going to shop at my local farmer's market every Saturday morning, or every Saturday morning that's logistically possible for me, most Saturday mornings. So now they've got something that's more specific that's going to ensure more fresh local food in the house and less junk food. Another example around exercise, a lot of people right now are saying, I'm going to do more exercise. That's also very nebulous and unclear. To go really specific, they might say something like, I'm going to form the habit of running for 45 minutes 3 times a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. You can see how that's a lot more specific. So getting right to the participatory portion of our workshop, I'd love you to first write down, as specific as you can make it, a habit that you want to form in the coming weeks or months. And I'll give you 30 seconds to a minute or so to do a little work on that. All right, so keep working on that if you'd like to. And let me just summarize this by explaining that now you have a snowball. If it's an unclear idea, nebulous, unclear idea, I want to have less junk food in the house, I want to exercise more, you don't really even have a snowball. You have some snowflakes that haven't been formed into a snowball yet. So hopefully everyone has at least the beginnings of a snowball. So step 2 is to get really clear on why you want to form that habit. And a good way to reflect on that question, or a good way to hone in on why you want to form that habit, is to ask yourself the question, what will this habit bring to my life? What we're starting to play with here are our values. And our values are very, very, very tied to motivation and the actions we take. So you want to take that habit you want to form and get really, really clear on why it's important to you, what it's going to bring to your life. Let me give you a couple examples. So someone might say, I want to form this self-care habit to be a good role model to my daughter. Someone might say, I want to have forming this self-care habit will give me more energy to have throughout my day, for my work life, for parenting, for everything else that I'm involved in. And someone else might say, this self-care habit will allow me or enable me to do more of the things I enjoy in my life. They might see their well-being slipping and some of the things they enjoy doing falling out of their life. And this self-care habit will boost their well-being and enable them to do some of these things again. So those are some sample examples. I'm being parsimonious with the examples on purpose because this is super important that it's your why. This is not what our society's values or your physician's values or a family member's values. This is why is forming this self-care habit valuable to you. So take 30 seconds or to a minute here, and I want you to jot down some notes on why this habit you want to form is important to you and what it'll bring to your life. All right, keep working on that a little bit if you'd like to. Going back to our snowball metaphor, you now have a significantly bigger snowball, or another way of thinking would be a snowball with a whole lot more mojo, right? So if someone wants to run 3 days a week and I ask them, why do you want to run 3 days a week? And they say, I don't know. They have kind of a feeble snowball. If I ask someone, why do you want to run 3 times a week? And they say, it's a lifelong dream of mine to be able to spend 6 weeks traveling through Europe on foot, backpacking. And right now I'm not even close to being fit enough to do that. And if I get in the habit of running 3 times a week, I'm going to be able to do that. Their snowball now has some substance to it. So hopefully you all now have a snowball with a little more mojo in it. So let's move to our third step. And our third step is to take a baby step, to take a step in the direction of the habit you want to form that is small. In most cases, smaller than you think it should be. We have an idea in our culture summarized by the saying, go big or go home. So for a lot of people, when it's time to make a change in their lives, they're conditioned to think, I gotta just go all in on this thing, or I'm not gonna have any motivation, I'm not gonna go anywhere. And what we know in the science of behavior change and habit formation is that going big is kind of like eating sugar. A person can be super excited, full of energy, ready to totally take control of their life, and then it fizzles and fades, and oftentimes falls away completely. This is common in the New Year resolution phenomenon, where people maintain resolutions for 2, 3, 4 weeks maybe, and they fade away. So an example I'll give you is, let's say you're currently not getting enough sleep, and maybe you're currently in the habit of staying up till 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and you know that the habit you want to form is to be getting to bed regularly, almost every night by 10 p.m. And you're certain that's what you want to do. You have a strong why for doing it. A good baby step might be something as small as, next week I'm going to get to bed before midnight 3 or more times a week. And what happens when we do something like that is we're setting ourselves up for success. So that person has a very good chance of getting to bed before midnight 3 times a week next week, because it's relatively doable. And what happens when we succeed in a commitment we make is we have a feeling that can be summarized by the either spoken out loud or in our head experience of, I did it. I did it, exclamation point. Like that, I can't believe it, I did it. I've been trying to get myself to eat better. I've been trying to get myself to exercise more. I've been trying to get myself to sleep earlier for a long time. I haven't been able to do it. Holy cow, I did it. That feeling of I did it, to go a little technical, is what we call self-efficacy. You're starting to get task-specific confidence that I can actually do this thing and I can actually change. And that is super, super, super motivating. When we get those feelings of I did it, we want more of that feeling. So that person in my example will likely have that experience of getting to bed before midnight 3 times a week, have that feeling of I did it, and almost automatically say to themselves, next week I'm going to try to get to bed before 11:30 3 times a week. Or I'm going to get to bed before midnight 4 or 5 times a week. And we have that snowball effect of the habit getting slightly bigger, slightly bigger, slightly bigger. To contrast that, this might resonate with you because, in my experience, most of us have had the counter experience, which is we set an extremely ambitious action step. We do sometimes quite a bit in that direction, but come up short because it was really big. So imagine in my example that this woman set right away to get to sleep before 10 o'clock every night. And in her first week, she got to bed before 10 o'clock 3 nights a week, couple nights at 11:30. Definitely better than she was doing before. But because she had stated in her mind sort of that go big or go home, I'm getting to bed before 10 o'clock every night, and didn't achieve that, the self-talk that she's likely to have is something like, I failed again, or here I go, making commitments and not following through on them. That kind of experience is demoralizing. That is anti-motivating. So we want to set ourselves up for success with small steps. Now, this next slide shows a picture that is one of those pictures that's worth 1,000 words. And it's also a good antidote to any skepticism you might have because of that go big or go home conditioning, thinking, oh, the baby steps is just kind of the weak approach or the cowardly approach, or it's just you're succeeding, but you're only succeeding because you're not really setting an ambitious goal. In practice, what's shown in this picture is what happens when people take small steps. Is in relatively short order, they get somewhere really far, and they avoid the experience on the right, which is the experience of, I can't even, I'm stuck. I can't even get started. So if you're ever feeling like the steps I want to take are too small, I know I need to take huge steps, remind yourself of this picture. So back to our snowball metaphor, we now have, hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to give you 30 seconds or a minute to take the habit you want to form, that you have a strong why for, you know your why, and take 30 seconds to a minute and make some notes about the first baby step you want to take in the direction of forming that habit. Keep working on that if you'd like. Let me add, and this is true of all of these reflection questions, is a great way to approach them is with what we call in wellness coaching an experimental mindset, meaning you don't have to get the answer right away. It's like brainstorming. So it's a great idea to go about reflecting on these questions, not trying to be perfect, not trying to know exactly what step or approach you're going to take right away. But to write down your best answers, to not censor or edit yourself. And then you can go back later and look at your brainstormed ideas and start to shape them into the approach you really want to take. So I'll leave that there. And back to our snowball metaphor, now we have a large snowball that's starting to roll down the hill. It's starting to go somewhere, because when we have an idea of clear idea of what we want to do and a strong why, it's still kind of in idea land or mental commitment land. Now we're taking some small steps, catching ourselves succeeding, and our snowball is going somewhere. It's rolling down the hill. It's starting to get a little bigger. It's starting to move a little faster. So the fourth step really can help accelerate our snowball if we make some mistakes in how we approach this fourth step. We really can slow down, or some things can be so damaging to habit formation that they can essentially melt our snowball. And particularly around eating habits and exercise habits, this is super, super, super key in our culture. So let me give you some examples of ways people tend to answer, the question of how can I make this habit more enjoyable when we're talking about eating habits and exercise habits. Someone might say, I'll buy and eat one new vegetable a week. This is a photo from one of my clients who sent this to me recently, saying, look at my delicious lunch. And one way she's made eating nourishing easy for herself is by making her meals delicious and appealing to the eye, like this salad. On the exercise front, back to that slide, a person might say, I'm going to meet my friend at my favorite gym. So they like the environment there, they enjoy spending time with their friend, and they're amping up the enjoyment. So I want you to really think about, how can I make this habit more enjoyable? How can I make it more fun? How can I experience more pleasure when I'm executing this habit? All of those things speed up momentum on our snowball. I want to take a slight detour into some ideas about nutrition and exercise. So, a lot of people have dieted before, and Kim mentioned in her introduction of me that I help people overcome yo-yo dieting and being out of that cycle. So there's a key characteristic of diet culture that is exclusion and restriction. So most diets, if you sort of read their instructions, it's cut out X, Y, and Z, reduce X, Y, and Z, or measure how much of X, Y, or Z you're having to make sure you don't have too much. And we know from the science of the psychology of dieting, or the psychology of exclusion and restriction when it comes to food, is that when we're taking an approach to food that's about denying ourselves, we essentially want those foods 40, 50, 60% more, depending on which scientific study you're looking at. So I highly suggest, and this is definitely a detour and it's a whole nother workshop, but broadly I suggest approaches to food and nutrition that are based on inclusion, nourishment, enjoyment, the social benefits of eating. Allow or make eating fun, nourishing, enjoyable, pleasurable. Those habits are way, way, way more likely to stick. Now, same thing can be said of movement, where we have a saying in our culture, no pain, no gain. And no pain, no gain, I like to call its sort of similar idea in food. If it tastes good, it's bad for you. If it tastes bad, it's good for you. So both of those statements put us in what's called a double bind. So we have the choice of doing that which is enjoyable, or doing that which is good for us or nourishing. And that is a dead end to your moving snowball. That is a guaranteed way to struggle to form a habit, because you got a well-adjusted part of you saying, I don't want to live a life that's miserable. I don't want to eat miserable food. I don't want to do workouts that I hate. I only get one life. Why would I dwell in misery? And you've got another well-adjusted part of you that values your well-being, values self-care, has specific goals you want to achieve around your well-being. So with movement, there's a neat saying, and I think the looks on these kids' faces captured are a neat question you can ask yourself, which is, why do children go to playgrounds and adults go to gyms? And so I hope you can feel the sentiment in that question. And the idea is that we don't have to make ourselves struggle. We don't have to make ourselves suffer. We naturally enjoy movement as kids, and we can continue to naturally enjoy movement as adults. The key really is getting out of that no pain, no gain mindset and allowing ourselves to have fun. So essentially recoupling enjoyment with nourishment around both food and movement is very, 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 very helpful. If anyone wants to dig deeper, I mentioned I'm a nutritionist and exercise physiologist. I want to focus today on broadly more the psychology of behavior change and habit formation. But I'm glad to answer questions about specific approaches to eating well and exercising well that help us get out of that double bind. I want to add one slightly technical element to this. And it's also helpful potentially if you're feeling a little skeptical about, can it really be enjoyable and good for me? And so in the research on behavior change and habit formation, there's this concept called an automatic affective evaluation. You've heard the word affective from like seasonal affective disorder. It means mood, feelings, that kind of thing. And there's another concept that it's contrasted with called a reflective attitude. And what most of us have been taught, especially if we're relatively well educated, and what we get a lot of in a very well-intentioned way from both the medical system and the public health system, is that if people have enough information, they will reflect on it and they will take action. So if you tell people enough that having high blood pressure leads to cardiovascular disease, and you can prevent cardiovascular disease by eating better and exercising more, people will do it. So that would be making a choice or taking an action based on a reflective attitude. Taking an action based on an automatic affective evaluation, I'm chuckling because that's like science speak for I love doing this thing. You know, I automatically do it because it feels good, is what that fancy, awkward scientific language is saying. And I had a conversation with a physician that I do quite a bit of collaborating with about this, and this is the way I explained it to him, because with his training at the time, he was pretty convinced that if you really hammer home the facts and the information and the data, then people will be motivated and people will take action. And he was finding that was only minorly successful with his patients. But I happen to know him fairly well and know that he's quite an active person, and he really does two things. In the summertime, he plays ultimate frisbee all the time, and in the wintertime, he downhill skis all the time. So I asked him, this is a little bit sarcastic, but I asked it respectfully. When you go, when you're at that moment where you've had a long work day, you're a little tired, you could easily drive home, or you could easily drive to the soccer field to play ultimate frisbee. What gets you there? Do you go because you say to yourself, I know that exercise prevents dementia and cancer and cardiovascular disease, and I'd prefer not to get those diseases 20, 30, 40 years from now, so I'm going to go to the soccer field and play ultimate frisbee? And he said, no, even though I know all that, even though I say that stuff to my patients a lot, that's not what gets me to the soccer field. I go because I love it. I go because I love the sport. I love being outside. I love nature. I love being around people. It's a very social sport. That's why I go. So that's the power of, to use science speak, tapping into automatic affective evaluations versus reasoning and logic for why to do things. Now, I'm all for reason and logic. It's extremely useful. It's just not super motivating when it comes to eating and exercise behaviors. So let me give you 30 seconds to a minute. I spoke quite a bit there. Maybe we'll even give you a minute to 2 minutes, because this is really a really important step. And do some brainstorming and write down for yourself as many ways as you can think of to make the habit you want to form even more enjoyable. So go ahead and have at that.
Hey, Jason.
Yes.
Did you want to address all the questions at the very end, or do you want to take a moment, probably at the end?
I think at the end is a great way to do them. I've got 3 more steps, and two of them are quick. So we should have some good time for questions at the end.
Okay, excellent.
So to use a bad pun, we'll keep our momentum going with the laying out the steps and then take them at the end.
Perfect.
All right, so keep working on that if you'd like, but I'm just going to bring us back to our snowball metaphor. So now it's not just rolling down the hill. If your habits are tied to enjoyable experiences, people you enjoy, enjoyable settings and surroundings, it's really picking up speed and really picking up momentum. And our next step will help us do that a little bit more. So what I want you to ask yourself is, how can I tie this habit to my existing strengths? This is also slightly countercultural because we often learn in school and other settings that the saying is sort of something like, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And people feel compelled to be a master at this thing they're going to do, this form of exercise, this approach to eating. And ultimately, almost anyone can become a master at almost anything. But to try to become a master by working on your weaknesses and eliminating, significantly reducing or eliminating your weaknesses, it doesn't help us get started and build a lot of momentum. We're much better off tying our habit to our existing strengths while we're getting going. So an example of this would be someone might say, someone might be on a mission to eat better and have a clear habit they want to form around eating better and a clear why around why they want to eat better. And they might say to themselves, I'm a really great cook, so I'm going to spend 2 or 3 hours on Sunday afternoons doing a lot of meal prep for the week. Person wasn't a really good cook, but they were, following someone else's guidelines or using the word that's super not helpful in forming habits. Should, I should meal prep on Sundays. The person has no cooking skills, no interest in cooking. That's not going to help them form their habit. That person would be better off doing something like, I'm going to sign up for a meal delivery service 3 nights a week. Their strength might be gathering people together. So they might chip in with their neighbors and go in on a meal delivery service 3 nights a week. Someone with that similar strength of getting people together might say, I'm going to form a walking club in my neighborhood. So our individual strengths are vast and cool because what make us who we are. So I'll just let you take another minute or so to think about how can you tie your habit to your existing strengths. Make a few notes about that. All right, keep working on that a little bit if you'd like to. And just keep in your mind now that with enjoyment, we made our snowball a little, tying our habit to enjoyment, we made it a little bigger and faster and more robust. And we're doing the same by tying our habit to our strengths. And there's one more thing we can do to really help us solidify our self-care habit. And that's to ask ourselves, how can I make it more convenient? A good example might be, I could set up a little yoga studio right in my living room. So this person might want to form the habit of doing yoga 4 times a week. They might have a busy job. They might have a big family. And even though they might have the opportunity to go to a crosstown yoga studio, that's really inconvenient in their lifestyle. Being able to do yoga in their living room would save them at least an hour between commuting time, being able to just go right to the shower at home or not even need to because they're not going into the office kind of thing. So any way you can make a habit more convenient you're essentially reducing the demand on the energy it takes to use willpower to get yourself to do something. So if you need to drive across town to get to a yoga studio, but that's just really adding a lot of pressure to your day, eventually you're going to say, I just can't go. I just don't have time. But if that makeshift yoga studio in your living room is 10 feet away from your home office, you've reduced the friction essentially, and allow your habit to continue to form. I mentioned earlier I mentioned meal delivery service. This is one I actually did for about the first 6 months of the pandemic. For $5 a week, I was able to have, a local market. I was able to order my food for the week online and have it delivered to my house at the time of my choice. I did that primarily to avoid food stores and the virus and the hysteria of especially of the earlier part of the pandemic. But I did discover that, holy cow, that I was saving a lot of time, and it was much more convenient. Now, I'll share this because it helps. There's sort of a ratchet or a give and take with all these habits. I really enjoy walking around a food market and seeing what's there, and ultimately that enjoyment was more important to me than the convenience of having it delivered. So take a minute or so and write out as many ways as you can think that you could make your habit more convenient, less friction. All right, so now you have several tools to help your snowball that's rolling down the hill to pick up more and more momentum. The 7th step really helps us cement our habits, and I would go so far as to say, don't just help us have a lot of momentum, but essentially make us near unstoppable with our habit. And that is to ask for and accept the support that you need to be successful with your habit or habits. And it's important to realize that humans are social animals. You hear people say we're social beings, we're social animals, we're social creatures. And I think this cannot be overstated. It is in our DNA, so to speak, to collaborate with and support one another. And I've heard this said this way. It's a neat way to think of just how important people supporting each other is as a human characteristic. We don't have night vision like some animals have to help them find food. We don't have fur to keep us warm in harsh, cold conditions. We don't have really sharp teeth or really sharp claws to help keep us safe from predators. What we have as our primary survival tool is our social nature, the way we form various social units and support one another. So really keep that in the back of your mind when you want to form a habit. And it's another thing that's a little bit countercultural, because we have an ethic in our country. Here in the United States, anyway, I know we have some people from outside, but I think at least most of most of Western civilization, definitely in the US, has an ethic of stubborn independence. Like, I should be able to do this by myself, and I can't. If I can't do this by myself, I'm weak, or there's something wrong with me. What's wrong with me, kind of thing. And I won't belabor that point. I'll just say that I don't agree with the idea that we should be able to do everything with ourselves. In fact, it's been my observation personally and professionally that anyone who does anything super substantial in their life does it with support of various kinds. So the muscle to build there is to really get good at asking for the kind of support you need, and then the additional muscle to build is accepting it, because a lot of us have been conditioned to stubbornly do things all by ourselves. So I will have you again brainstorm on the ways you can get support. I want you to take a look at this graphic, because it'll give you an expanded view of what it means to get support. So you can think of support as having, at least around forming self-care habits, as having 4 potential areas. So the upper right would be personal general support. So that would be talking to a friend in your life on a regular basis and letting them know the habit that you're trying to form, asking them to check in with you and say and ask you how it's going, and just having friendly support in your life from a friend, a partner, another family member, or anyone like that. Personal specific support would be if you're planning to walk 3 days a week, having a friend or a family member or a neighbor commit to walking with you some of those times. If you're doing meal prep on Sundays, I had a client who had this really creative idea that she had friends come over for like meal prep parties. They would each bring a dish they're going to prepare. Somebody would be in charge of the music that day. That's how they would agree on the music. And they would go home with the food mostly the food they prepped, but they would also get some of the food that everyone else prepped. So that was a way to for this client of mine to get some support in building the habit of meal prepping for herself on the weekends. Then let's go in the lower right corner. So that's where you have like general professional support. So that might be having a conversation with a physician, your primary care physician, about, I want to lose weight this year. I want to improve my biometrics, my blood cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar. Can you be checking in? Can we check in on that every 3 months, every 6 months? And ask for what kind of support he or she might be able to provide you with. That's a super helpful genre of support. Specific professional support would be, say you were a swimmer in high school, but you hadn't swam in 10 or 15 years and you wanted to get back in swimming. You took some swimming lessons at your local Y to help you form a swimming habit. Taking yoga classes where there's an instructor teaching the classes. Working with a nutritionist, working with a personal trainer, working with a wellness coach like myself. Those are all ways to get specific professional support. Another example would be, Kim mentioned she's going to have an expert in talking about sleep and challenges with sleep. I don't know who that speaker is, but I'm imagining it's someone that's an expert on sleep and sleep hygiene and solving sleep problems. If one of your habits that you want to form is around sleep, there are experts that can help us in most genres. So I'll give you a full 2 or 3 minutes on this one. And I would invite you to write down at least one, and as many as you feel like, ways that you could get some support in all 4 of these categories. again, I encourage you to use an experimental mindset, and so don't censor or edit yourself. If you have some ideas that would of gaining support that would be optimal for you, you think would be optimal for you, write them down. If there's a part of your mind saying, I can't afford that one, or I don't have time for that one, write it down anyway, because what you'll find in the process is, let's use the I can't afford that one example. You might be able to find a way to do it more affordably than you thought. Or the I don't have time example, you might be able to find a way to make it take less time than you're currently thinking. So really think, with your heart, what kind of support, would really help me accomplish this habit, even if it's a little out of your reach to acquire that support for one reason or another. You might be able to acquire a modified version of that support. So it's a good idea not to just eliminate it from your list altogether, but to put it down in a brainstorm fashion. All right, so you now have the 7 steps. You can see how the early steps give us a snowball. The middle steps get our snowball rolling and then gaining momentum. And the support step, the final step, make us virtually unstoppable, because we're all going to slip when we're changing a behavior and forming a new habit. And support essentially is there to pick us up when we fall down and help us keep going, and keep those slips from turning into bigger slips, and sort of falling off the wagon. So to tie this together before I take some questions, the next 2 slides can be used effectively as a troubleshooting guide. So I would encourage you, if you'd like to take a screenshot of these. I'm going to start with the more negative one. These are the ways to melt your snowball. So nobody wants to melt their snowball, but if you're finding that you're struggling with forming your habit, you can look at this slide almost as the troubleshooting guide that comes with your car or an appliance. Because if your habit is falling apart, you're probably doing one or more of these 7 things. You're unclear on what habit you want to form. You're unclear on why you want to form it or what it'll bring to your life. You're trying to do too much too soon, and you're experiencing failure. You're having that self-talk of, I'm failing again, what's wrong with me? And that's very demotivating. Your habits, the actions you're taking in some way are miserable, boring, or actually painful. Most human beings in most situations will not keep doing that which they find miserable. Your habit is not tied to your existing strengths, it's inconvenient, or you're lacking support. Those would be all the things that could slow you down. To state it positively and to finish on the positive note, these are the things that if you have that experience of, all right, I'm going off track here, what can I do to get back on track? See if you can make your desire more clear. See if you can get more clear on your why, and remind yourself your why over and over and over again. Have pictures that represent your why, have a mantra that represents your why, whatever is helpful to you. Being really clear on your why, reminding of yourself often is tapping into your deepest emotions, and that's extremely motivating. If you're struggling and you want to get back on track, consider making it a smaller step and giving yourself the chance to experience success. That's very motivating. Turn up the enjoyment factor, the pleasure factor, the fun factor. Make sure your habit is tied to your existing strengths. Make it absolutely as convenient as possible, and get as much support as you possibly can. So take a screenshot of that one as well, if you like. I'm going to open it up to questions in a moment, but I think is a good time, maybe, Kim, just to do some final logistics. So again, here's my contact info if anyone has questions. We will also send you, I'll send you my PowerPoint, and Kim or I will send you the recording of this workshop if we have your email address. So one great way to do this, if you haven't done that, is on the Coastal Pharmacy and Wellness website, where there's the information about my workshop. Kim, is it okay for someone to sign up now so we have their info?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay. If another way to do it, you could send me your info. If Kim and I have your info, we'll be able to get you my PowerPoint presentation, the recording. Kim will be able to keep you in touch of future workshops they're hosting at Coastal. I'll be able to keep you posted of future workshops I'm doing. I do a lot of stuff more specific on nutrition. I do a lot of more specific stuff on exercise. I do a specific talk about overcoming yo-yo dieting. I do a specific talk about overcoming emotional eating, which is a really big challenge for a lot of people. So just make sure we have your info if you're interested in receiving any of that. And with that, I will take a few questions. And Kim, it sounds like you have questions in the chat bar. Kim, can you still hear me? Kim, you might be.
I know what happened. I was muted again.
Okay, I was going to say, if you could hear me, you must have been on mute. Okay, gotcha.
Okay, so I wasn't sure if I wasn't live that my voice wouldn't come over, but anyways, so this is the first one. How many habits should I look to change at a time? Should you work on maybe a few things for a month or so and then add a few more after the habit feels solid? So maybe only work on 2 or 3 changes at a time or so.
Yeah, great idea. Generally speaking, great question. Just like making habits small, I can't put a number on it. It's different person to person, but generally speaking, err on a smaller number of habits. I wouldn't say it's necessary to always only do one at a time, because oftentimes they can be complementary. A person often wants to be doing, for example, an exercise habit and an eating habit. As long as both are small and you give yourself a chance to really make them strong, that's usually not a problem. But trying to make 7 or 8 habits, yeah, that usually would be a problem.
Okay, so the second question was precipitated by your go big or go home statements in step 3. So is the fact that some people are all or nothing and some people are able to be moderators a factor in being able to set and reach goals or form habits? So for example, if I don't exercise every single day, I won't do it at all. She knows this about herself. She's thinking along the lines of, say, an alcoholic who cannot drink in moderation. It's no drinking at all. So 1 day at a time or bad things will happen. Yeah. Is there any research suggesting this is legit or is it a self-limiting belief?
That's an excellent question. I don't know if there's any research suggesting that sort of like a personality type, meaning more of a moderate personality type or more of a all-in personality type fundamentally. There certainly is an addictive personality, and I want to be careful to tread lightly and not step out of my scope of practice, because talking about, when we go into the realm of alcoholism and those kind of addictions, we're really talking about more like therapist, physician expertise. But I'll share as a wellness coach, my perspective on that question would be that generally speaking, what I've observed, if a person is in that really, really all or none kind of place, there usually is an addictive personality and an addiction history. And getting some help with that, probably from a therapist, someone or some other medical expert on addiction, would probably help the person both in forming the habits they're able to form in a more moderate way, and they could probably use that help anyway. So that's my perspective as what I see in people trying to form habits. I see, generally speaking, that no matter what's forming it, which again is significantly out of my expertise and scope of practice, it doesn't usually bode well for truly forming a new habit, because as strong as the all-in tendency is, the all is as strong as the all-out tendency. So a person riding that wave is usually white-knuckling the process. And as much as it might look good on paper that they're exercising every day in their log, that person is usually a razor-thin margin away from being all out. So I hope that helps a little bit, and might be like, if you want some deeper information on that, might be a better question for a therapist or an addiction specialist. Why don't we do one more if there's one more, Kim?
Okay, there are three more, but I'll do one. Okay. So the two that I'm looking at are kind of along the same lines as goal setting. She's saying, what is more effective as far as a goal as a driving force? I don't want to be fat and exhausted anymore, or I want to get in shape and be more energetic. So probably the energetic side of things. But then the regarding the slide with the two ladders, what should the goal be at the top of the ladder? If talking about fitness, would it be ideal weight, great cholesterol levels, healthy blood pressure, able to run a 5K, etc.? Or would it be integrated healthy habit that is now executed every single day?
That's like an incredible question, because that's the graduate level habit formation question. And if I'm answering it in multiple choice, I'm going to say what you described as B. What's in the characteristics of making something a lifestyle. Mean it's more. There's two important words in motivation: intrinsic and extrinsic. They make it more intrinsic. It's more for you. It's less about getting a reward or punishment. It's more. Let me think of a way to say this. There's almost a neat spectrum of motivation, which is we do something to achieve a goal. We do something, stepping down a notch, sort of more closer to who we are, is we do something because we want to form that habit. We want to live that kind of lifestyle. And then the deepest, if you can get there, is I do that because it's who I am. It's in harmony with my true self, one might say. So I hope that's helpful. Would be glad to go deeper on that outside of this workshop. I apologize for the questions we didn't get to. I do want to honor the time, knowing that some people might have a 12 o'clock meeting, have planned the 1 hour only. If I didn't answer your question, feel free to email it to me, and I would love to answer it. So I want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you for your great questions. Thank you especially for coming online when we all have plenty to do online. I will say that, when times are more suited to doing in-person workshops, for those of you that are local, I do in-person workshops all the time, and would love to meet some of you in the real world at some point. So have a great day.